INEC has formally notified Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan of a petition seeking her recall from the National Assembly. Now, this development comes after the petitioners provided the necessary contact details, including addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses, which were initially missing. The petition, which allegedly contains signatures from over 50% of the 474,554 registered voters in Kogi Central Senatorial District, accuses Natasha of gross misconduct, abuse of office, and evasion of due process. INEC will now scrutinize the list of signatories to verify that the petition meets the constitutional requirement of having signatures from more than 50% of the registered voters in the constituency. The outcome of this verification process will determine the next steps in the recall process. I'll be speaking, just like I mentioned earlier, with Cynthia Mbamalu. She's the Director of Programs, Yiaga Africa, joining from Abuja. I'll also be speaking with Rotimi, Oyekanmi, the Chief Press Secretary to INEC Chairman, joining virtually also from Abuja. I'll also be joined by Dr. Sam Amadi, the Director, that's the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought, also joining from Abuja. Gentlemen and lady, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Let me
Thank you for having me.
All right. Let me start with you, Mr. Oyekanmi. I mean, you're the Chief Press Secretary to INEC Chairman. We know that a press release on this matter, there's an update on it, update on the recall of Senator representing Kogi Senatorial District. I'll just read a part of that press release. It said the next step is to, as provided in Clause 2, that's subsection A of the Commission's regulation on guidelines for recall of 2024, a letter has been written to notify the senator sought to be recalled about the receipt of the petition and delivered to our official address. The same letter has been copied to the presiding officer of the Senate and published on the Commission's website. The next step is to scrutinize the list of signatories submitted by the petitioners to ascertain the petition is signed by more than one half, that's over 50% of the registered voters in the constituency. Let me stop there. Now, Mr. Oyekanmi, I would like you to take us through what this process, entails, what it's about, and where we are, even though we know that there's an official press release at the moment as regards the recall of Senator Natasha Uduaghan.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Registered voters with the opportunity to in the legislative houses, House of Representatives, Senate, State Assembly, territory. But there's a procedure for doing that. What the law says is that if you are not happy with your representative and you must talk in their you are together signature of the registered voters in that constituency. It's like half plus one. If there are 100 voters, registered voters in that constituency, we expect signatures from 51 of the registered voters in that constituency. Now, they will get a petition and sign that petition and submit this petition to the INEC chairman, stating confident and that the process of now that is the presentation. We received the petition.
Mr.
Examine the petition.
If you can hear me well, we are having a bit of audio issues. Trying to hear you well. It seems your audio isn't pretty much consistent. It keeps going off and on. Maybe we might just want to you might just want to look into that. But I don't know. Let me probably I should still stay with you on this one. So let's see if it's better now. Please go ahead.
Okay, so Can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so I was saying that the present. So when you present, we then examine the petition to ascertain whether the signatures are actually up, and that's our internal process. So that's the first stage. It is after we have identified and ascertained that more than 50% of the registered voter in that constituency signed the petition, then move to the next stage. Now, we notify the who is being recalled, I mean, the person against whom the petition was written, to notify that person that, well, we have a petition in place, and this is the situation, and then we copy that letter to the presiding officer of that. Now, after ascertaining the signature of more than half of the registered voters in that constituency, we now move to the public duties, where we inform the concerned that we will do verification at the polling units, right? So we publish that notice and we give a date, and then we appoint verification officers. Now, on the appointed day, the verification officers will go to the local government in that constituency.
Mr. Oyekanmi,
So,
sorry, if you can hear me, we are really struggling to hear you. So maybe, I might just move away from you slightly for a moment so that we can sort, the audio issues out, right? So please, I will come back to you and your response on this matter. But let me move to Cynthia. Cynthia, you are the Director of Programs for Yiaga Africa. You've also been following, your group has been following and monitoring, this particular process from the time she, put up the allegation to where we are at the moment. I mean, as a civil society group, what are your observations and, if at all, reservations, particularly when it comes to the handling?
Thank you. That's a very important question because you said our observations and our reservations. I think it's important we state clearly that we understand that recall, it's a democratic process. It is guaranteed in the Constitution that constituents who are not satisfied with their lawmakers have the power to recall their lawmakers. However, the challenge with this particular situation is one, the interests behind this situation, the context within which this supposed recall has commenced, and also the issues that are yet to be resolved with respect to this supposed recall. And I think, for one, unlike several other instances where there's been an attempt to recall a lawmaker before, usually there are specific grounds within which constituents convene to recall a senator. But this particular situation is arising from, one, a supposed suspension of a distinguished senator from the Senate, a 6 months, which I actually do believe it's actually an unjust and in most cases, in my own opinion, illegal suspension of distinguished Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan from the Senate. One, there was an issue that had arisen in the Senate, and the major conversation, based on what the Ethics Committee had told us, was that the hearing on the Ethics Committee was focused on the agitation on a seat allocation. However, the subsequent penalties that arose from the decisions of the committee indicate that that sort of penalty obviously was not an issue of just agitation around seat. There was a lot more interest behind that.
I mean, sorry, I need to come in here. You said the subsequent. Sorry, Cynthia. You said the subsequent penalties sort of changed the tides when it comes to the whole drama we're seeing around this. Can you be more specific as regards the penalties here?
Yes, I mean, if the penalties, one, you had the 6-month suspension. There was also the order stating that she cannot address herself as a senator both nationally and globally. She's also not supposed to be anywhere close to the National Assembly. Her allowances were also stripped of her. And so if you think about the penalties, I talked about 6-month suspension. You know what that means in the life of a senator, of a lawmaker or legislators. The idea is you represent your constituents. So what has been done was to arbitrarily deny the constituents of the Kogi Central constituency the right to representation, equitable representation in the Senate. So there was that. Then there was the fact of you cannot address yourself as a senator nationally and globally, and then the demand that she cannot approach or be at the National Assembly premises, and then the fact that also her allowances were also withdrawn or withheld. And so if you think about the sanction, especially vis-a-vis the fact that their rule books does provide that for suspension, there is a stipulation that a suspension should not exceed 14 days. And we also have precedents from court that have said that lawmakers, legislators should not be suspended for more than 14 days because a prolonged suspension deprives the citizens in their constituencies the right to equitable representation. But in regardless of the rule book of the Senate, regardless of precedents in the court, the Senate went ahead to impose these, for me, very brutish penalties on Senator Natasha. However, what we've seen post that is now the politics around the recall, and which is why I said earlier that I think we need to understand that there's nothing fundamentally wrong in recall. However, there is a problem when the recall process is perceived to be more political than democratic.
I mean,
that is what the problem is.
I'm sorry to come in. I mean, for some individuals that, of course, are following all of what is going on between Senator Natasha and, of course, the Senate President Godswill Akpabio, some Nigerians are saying, why hasn't she brought out the proofs or evidence? You know, could there be some sort of maybe validity to their request? Some Nigerians saying, you know what, if you have evidence against this man, put it up, maybe on social media, let the people see.
I think we need to understand that if we follow these, they are separate conversations here. There was a suspension that was supposedly based on her response to a seat allocation in the Senate because they had talked about legislative insubordination. Then there is a conversation around the sexual assault and sexual harassment allegation, which I believe needs to be treated as an important allegation. It needs to be investigated and it needs to be dealt with. However, the supposed reason for the suspension, based on what the committee had said, unless the committee also and the Senate lied to Nigerians, was that they had considered the issue they considered at the point of the committee was what I would just term supposed legislative insubordination, because she had agitated against a seat allocated to her on the floor of the chambers. And so if you put that, I think we need to be clear around this. The sexual harassment allegations came out after the incident that happened in the floor of the chambers. And that has its own process and procedure. And because it has its own process and procedure, it needs to be treated as a serious issue that has to be addressed as a single serious issue on its own. However, what we seem to interpret from the penalties imposed by the Senate is that it's almost like the level of the penalties, because like I said, the sanctions were not proportionate to the supposed offense. It seemed like her expression of a sexual harassment experience had informed the decision of the committee. But like you said, the Senate said that was not the case. And so I'm saying, if at all, the conversation on the floor of the Senate was that there was an agitation around the seat and we want to address this as a legislative insubordination issue, the rule books is clear. on what the roles should be and what the penalties should be. And the Senate in its decision breached that rule. It breached its own rule book, and it also went against precedent of courts that we've had in previous cases where there were suspensions of lawmakers in previous instances. So that is one. The second is the fact that irrespective of the allegation of sexual harassment, there has been no sincere approach on the part of the Senate to actually address the complaints.
We'll still come back. We'll come back to the role of the Senate, in all of this, in terms of their handling. At some point, we would even bring up, a clip, an exclusive interview that News Central recently had with one of the senators that had, a shouting match with, of course, a distinguished Nigerian, doing the hearing. But let me move to Dr. Sam Amadi, is the director for the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Dr. Sam, it's great having you, but let me go straight to it. Let's talk about your observations also in this particular case that we are seeing. Many are beginning to ask topical questions as regards women in politics and also the issue of sexual harassment. And if at all, on this case, are women really supporting women? Because, if you look at even the recall of Senator Natasha Akpoti, part of those spearheading this recall are women.
Okay, thank you. Again, I think there are certain things to clear before I get to that. First is, I think that Natasha is both a victim and the person who is holding the wrong stick now. A victim of power play. Again, nobody's talking about the fact that the Senate and National Assembly rules are problematic. I was special advisor to a Senate president, and one of my thoughts then came about one of the perhaps best Senate presidents. And I saw how senators were concerned about see the Senate President as another chief executive. And I've argued that the Senate President, the Speaker, are not mini Tinubu. They are president officers. So again, after this hoopla and all this dust, we should get back to the simple concept of what is the National Assembly supposed to be? A deliberative house. And therefore, the level of respect, and it's not about they tell the Senate President, you're the dictator. The senators have weaponized that office. At a point, they were telling us to have the Senate President has his own villa, presidential jet. I remember when we had problems with Obasanjo, Mbamalu, and some senators met Ken and said, look, we should have our own presidential jets. The president gives the Senate President the privilege to ride jets on presidential flights, some speaker. And they are saying we ought to have our own. Look at the entourage that goes, look at the US, for example. The Senate leader, the VP, who is a kind of a nominal Senate president, if you like. And look at the speaker. So that's the thing to bear in mind, that there's a bigger subtext here, which is that we have created, we've made that office to become too executive, that is now oppressing male, female. The second point is that issues around sex, in politics, kind of confuses people. And I like to look at more of harassment and sexuality. Because the sex side could be problematic. People are saying, okay, bring proof. Okay, people say, this is 2 years or 1 year. Why didn't you report? So we don't even know whether at some point consensuality and then there's a fracas. The history since the new movement is that, once there is sexuality involved, it could move from a sword to a shield. So you use it to defend yourself or to attack. But let's get to the practical side of it. First is that many people misconceive the National Assembly, and that's the problem with Nigeria. Concepts first. National Assembly is a political institution, not a judicial or justice institution. First error. The processes are not fair hearing, as in Section 33 or thereabout of the Constitution, meaning that it's acceptable for National Assembly to craft a rule, their own rules, in a way that in deciding whether to keep their political officer or remove him, they will not go through the full rigor of rule of law here. So I hear some lawyers say, oh, but administrative tribunals are supposed to go to law. They are different. Administrative tribunals are quasi-judicial in their function. The National Assembly, the legislature, is the political branch in in conventional political science.
Are you saying that the National Assembly has no role in handling this matter in terms of what we call the hearings that we are seeing, within the complex and committees being set up? Are you saying it's outside the purview of the National Assembly?
No. Fair hearing, for example, the Senate hearing can never translate to a punitive measure. For example, the way Chief Obi came there, if Obi says, I'm not going to talk, if Obi says something like they abuse themselves, they cannot resort to punishment like a court. Fair hearing here, that's the point of that. Fair hearing here is a hearing that is legitimate within their rules. Rather, the court defer to them. The courts cannot intervene in the proceedings of the National Assembly. For example, now, the legislators make laws and they're allowed to input their private interests. You can have a law now that says give children right to education. And somebody says, as a Christian, as a Muslim, or as a Jehovah's Witness, or as an Assemblies of God, I will not vote. My constituents don't want children to go to school. And he votes against right of children. All of us who are human rights activists will be so ashamed. But it's a legitimate expression of representation, because that institution is canonically standard trademark interest-based bargaining. That's number one. Number two, the point I'm trying to make is this. Two issues here. Sexual harassment is a crime under the law. Sexual harassment leads to tort, what you call the law of tort, meaning that Natasha could move the police to investigate, for example, the Senate President who has no immunity. He could be prosecuted and imprisoned. The Saraki, as a Senate President, was going through trial on code of conduct. So there's no immunity. But within that hall, when they are doing their proceeding, they can decide that even though our Senate President is going on trial, we will not remove him. But they can decide to remove a Senate President who has just a mere allegation with someone that are removed. So I'm just getting to the point that the activists should be able to have this sense, a nuanced idea.
I'm trying to understand you. Sorry, Dr. Amadi, because we need to go on a break quickly.
Yeah.
You've said quite a number of things. So are you saying that at this point, I mean, since this allegation came up, there should have been moves to say, Mr. Senate President, please, while these issues around sexual harassment is on, can you kindly step aside to clear your name, so that we can continue with the proceedings within the House? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that the members can do that if they choose to. If they don't want to do that, our remedy is not to bully them to do so. Our remedy is to pursue non-political remedies, touch, compensation, imprisonment. And then the political remedy is about, again, look at the hearing. Why do you ask? It's wrong, and I'm sorry to disappoint my people on the other side. You cannot ask the chairman of the committee to recuse himself because it's biased. No! For fair hearing in judicial tribunals, that's fair. Bias is conflict of interest. But in parliamentary business, bias, look at what happened with Gates in the US. The reports came out, they didn't show it, they refused to kill it. But when the political type changed, they brought that they have a discretion. So I think that we are worsening Natasha's case, in my view. We need to fight on clear two fronts. One is to make sure she gets compensation for the harassment, which is a different matter. And two, to engage the political process, to restore her back to that parliament, not to see the parliament as a court. Many people have spoken as if it's a court. Oh, it's a fair hearing. Oh, bias. No, it is called a political branch for a purpose.
All right, Dr. Sam Amadi will definitely come back to you, but let's go on a quick break. When, of course, we return, we'll be looking at the role of the Senate in handling all of this. I mean, by your perception and your review, is it balanced? I mean, these are some of the topical questions we'll be dealing with when we return. Stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. Of course, it's still Politics HQ on News Central TV. And of course, we are discussing issues around Senator Natasha Akpoti and, of course, the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, as regards of course, a scandal and the political implications of this. I still have with me the Director of Programs, Yiaga Africa, Cynthia Mbamalu. She joins virtually from Abuja. I also have Rotimi Oyekanmi, is the Chief Press Secretary to the INEC Chairman, also joining virtually from Abuja. And Dr. Sam Amadi is the director for the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Thank you for staying with me. Let me come back to you, Mr. Rotimi Oyekanmi. I want to believe that will not express the audio issues anymore. So let me give you time to actually land on your point. I was asking you what exactly the process or the procedure is and what next. We know that you've gotten the signatures, but right now you're at the point of scrutinizing the details of this petitioners. So what next?
Much. I hope you're hearing me now. I was trying to explain that the first thing we do is to ascertain the signatures that you submitted, but at the same time we notify the lawmaker against whom the petition has been written to say that, look, we have this petition and this process is in place. So that is the first stage. We now have the obligation to ascertain those signatures. And we have to ensure that the signatures are up to 50 plus 1%. When that is done, we now move to verification. Verification will be carried out with all the and it's just like conducting an election. We appoint verification, and we also allow the lawmaker verification agents, and we ascertain. We open the verification process at 8:30 in the morning, close at 2:30, just like normal election that we have. Now, at the end of verification, if it is ascertained, after all the collation and announcements of the polling units, the registration areas, and everything is collected, establish that more than 50% registered voters have 50 plus 1. We now move to the referendum.
Okay.
So it's not an easy process. The referendum is a level of voting. Voters vote. But you know,
okay, so what you're saying is after now, just so that we get you correctly, after now, the next process is a referendum?
Yes, after verification. But verification, those who signed the petition only. And when we are carrying out verification, we will use the beavers, we will do accreditation to ascertain that the person that is in front of us, whose signature we have in the petition, is the same person, is one and the same person. So after that is done, we now move to referendum. So it's not a process, it's not a work. It's a very serious matter.
Okay, so I mean, should the recall fly, if at all, it means INEC might have to or will have to conduct fresh elections for that senatorial district. Is that it?
No. When after the referendum, if the referendum means that the petition survives or passes, we will now inform the presiding officer of the results of the referendum. So the presiding officer will now have to declare vacancy, you know, the normal way, and then will now go back and conduct election again in that constituency, allowing all those who are interested to contest.
Okay.
So that's the process.
Okay. I mean, just for clarity, I mean, is INEC under any pressure, political pressure, to ensure that maybe this recall happens? Are you under pressure?
Absolutely not. We are not under pressure. No
political influence, no calls from anywhere.
No, we are not under any form of. People know, the politicians know. Says we must follow, and everything is open.
All right.
That's why in the last 48 hours, we have issued 2 press statements. And we are assuring Nigerians that this process will be open and transparent. Right. Every level, every process will be open to people to scrutinize. And if we go to the verification stage, people, the society, media, observers will be allowed to observe the process. So we are not under any pressure at all.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Mr. Oyekanmi. Now let me go to Cynthia. Cynthia, I mean, feel free to react to any of what you've had, but let's look quickly at the role of the Senate in handling this matter. Before I come for your response on this, News Central had, an interview with one of the senators who sort of, engaged in a shouting match with the other statesperson, that's Madam Obi. But I want you to listen to an excerpt of that interview by Senator Oyekanmi. Take a listen.
Mockery of sexual harassment during the time of Goodluck Jonathan as president, when the young man was already in U.S. attending to national issue. But of unlucky to her, she didn't know that this young man was outside the country. Upon the slightest provocation, she will come up with allegation of sexual harassment. And I don't know what is wrong with this lady. Does she think that she's the most beautiful woman on earth? Or is it because she's had chocolate color? In my own assessment, she's not among the beautiful women in Nigeria. And it is high time we come hard on her. And why people like us are speaking on top of our voice is not just to protect and defend the Senate president, but to protect and defend her future victims. Even her present husband, she married her out of something like this. She threatened to sue the man and have a letter circulating over the world that the man should pay her 10 billion or marry her. The man had to marry her under duress. So the marriage was under duress and under a product of blackmail. I was watching a video of how the father of the first wife of the husband narrated her ordeal when this lady came into their family, destabilized their family, and took over her husband.
All right.
And without going into her character, I asked Senator Natasha how many husbands has she had in her life at the age of 47 or 45. Well,
I mean, you had everything there that Senator Peter did say as regards Senator Natasha. I think I would start with you, Cynthia. I mean, you're a woman. I mean, listening to that and the Senate handling of this matter, how do you feel?
Well, I think first is to apologize to Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. No woman, especially someone who has fought through an electoral process, fought hard to represent her people, and have reasonably been a voice of reason even before her foray into politics, should have to be subjected to such hateful comments and statements. So, and I think as a people we can do better. We can do better, honestly. So, it's just to say, sorry, Senator Natasha Akpoti, because I know it must not be easy to deal with this situation. And it's not just distinguished Senator Peter that has taken this line of action in responding to this issue. From February, I think February 20th, 21st, when all of this issue started, I've seen and I've tracked media conversations of senators speaking on this issue. And the truth and the sad part of it is there's been very little focus on the content of the issue itself, or even the issues around the allegation. There's been a lot more derogatory statements. It's been a lot more attacks on her personality, a lot of hateful messages to women. I mean, we've seen in the past couple of weeks where distinguished senators have said things like, oh, maybe women should not be allowed into politics, or women should go through some sort of psychological assessment before they get into politics. We've had people question the integrity of women in particular. We've also had conversations indicating that perhaps the Senate did not also have an in-house meeting on how to respond to these issues, and rather the attempt has been to undermine, degrade, derogate, and use the most abusive terms in responding to the issues, especially attacking the personality of a fellow senator. And it's unfortunate because I think that because she is a woman, they have rather reduced the argument to showcase that our system is still politically hostile to women. And for me, the bigger conversation is not, because I don't want to give credence to the conversations by Senator Peter. It's unfortunate. This is how he felt he needed to express himself. But I also think it's important we understand that the men in the Senate need to understand that we are no longer in those ages where women who face any level of oppression will sit back and not fight back.
But my question also, Cynthia, is, are women also supporting women? Using this case as a case study, because some questions are being asked as to why are other female senators relatively silent on this matter? And even if you look at the recall proceedings that is ongoing, part of those pushing it are women.
See, please, I need us to understand the tool of the oppressor. And if you are dealing with a power that has existed for so long, it's difficult to dislodge that. I always give an example with the civil rights movement. In fact, the period of slave trade. And I always say this, that while slave trade lasted so long was because it was easier for the whites to have gatekeepers amongst the slaves that they caught. So even for those that escaped, when you're caught, you're dealt with so much that others that dare to escape will change their thoughts around escaping. While they were blacks that were elevated to a status of gatekeepers to ensure that they also kept their people oppressed. And that's the tool of oppressors everywhere. If you look at our history, even during colonial rule, there was a reason indirect rule was introduced. There was also a reason why it was easier for the colonial leaders to rule through our people, to subject us, that even in the fight for independence, some citizens did not believe that we were ready for independence. And so if you understand the tool of the oppressor and understand that when you're a minority voice, it's difficult to really fight, especially when you're struggling to survive. This is also about the politics of survival. I'm not going to sit back here and call out the few women. There are 4 female senators, and now with one suspended, 3. I'm not going to really sit back and call them because I know that what they deal with in the Senate as a minority voice is going to be tough and difficult. And if you speak with some of them, their experiences are things they may never want to come out and say in the media. And so when we are dealing with such a situation, you need to understand the game, the politics of it. Now, if you talk about the recall, I feel sad for the young woman that has been used, the recall. And I said that I feel sad because if you listen to her interview, she had said at one point, the game is the game. And I just realized that, oh my God, she doesn't even understand that she's being used as a tool, because it is not a game. Democracy is not about game. It's not a game. It's about representation. It's about the soul and sanctity of our system. And if someone who is an SSA to the sitting governor, we know obviously is the opposition, because Senator Natasha ran on the platform of the PDP. We know she is from the APC. I'm very sure she did not vote for her. That one, we're clear on that. So we understand the politics around that also. But I'm not going to sit back here and criticize. I understand that she thinks it's a game, because also there is a lack of awareness and consciousness on a lot of us to understand why this moment is important to safeguarding our democracy. And please let us be clear on certain things certain things happening at the moment. There is an attempt to silence this distinguished Senator Natasha, and there's a lot of things in play, because we've had instances where senators have been suspended, but this is the first time that in this kind of instance there is an attempt to proceed with a recall, not because she was not functioning, but because there's a politics around it. And then the question is, why is this recall?
Cynthia, are you there? I think we lost connection there with Cynthia. Once we're able to connect with her, of course, we'll bring her on. But let me move to Dr. Sam Amadi. Dr. Sam, I would like you to just speak briefly on, even though you feel that it's not totally within the purview of the Senate to handle this matter, so far what you've seen is the handling balanced? And what does this reflect when it comes to women in politics? I mean, Cynthia was using the word minority.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. First, let me say the leadership of Abio is disastrous. Basically, I mean, we are friends. We talk about. I think he failed woefully, and this is not an isolated case. This is the same notion of power and no self-restraint. First, they should have told her leave the seats at the floor. The normal thing is to send an email over time. I mean, dignity of a process. There's no urgency to bundle her out of sitting position. So they could have said, look, you know what? We want you to this seat. The same person has the power to relocate seat, and that's part of the problem. I think the rules don't put. You see, we Nigeria and Africans, our democracy is not rule-based. We have few rules. Those allow people to over-exercise power, overreach. So that's the Senate did not act in a dignified manner, and I think clearly that it looks like they just want to deal with her. So I think it was misconduct. Okay, she too. I thought at some point too, perhaps looking back from hindsight, she probably could have handled it better than the way she did. And now having to go to talk about sexual harassment, it takes the matter away from mere parliamentary process and the breach of it to a criminal and tortious violation. So she has a right not to. And then going to court has also trapped that matter of sexual harassment away from the National Assembly. So I think that there are three things to be saying here. One is that the National Assembly is not responding in a dignified manner. The comments that are making about her, further exposes the National Assembly to ridicule shows some level of hooliganism, in my view. But having said that, I want us to make this point clear. It's going to be like this, that this matter will be over-gendered. So there's not a gender war around it. This is a matter of a violation that happened to a senator. That's not happened to a female. Now, it's possible that other females are going through different levels of victimization or harassment, but perhaps they are not, they factor it as part of maybe the experience of politics. I used to chair a committee, subcommittee of women and children, the United Delta Summit under Yiaga. And I had senators, Senator Long and others on that. And each time a matter comes up, and I say, let's look at how it affects women and children. They will heckle me. I said, sir, look, we're not here for all that. So the point is this. There are multidimensional conflicts going on. I don't like issues being reduced to just gender, okay, men against women. Because there are actually men that Senator Amadi are also oppressing. I'm assuming that with Senator Amadi was.
You said that there are men. Sorry. You said there are actually men that Senator Amadi is also oppressing. I mean, do you know some of these men?
Yes. I know, for example, you saw Amadi yesterday being heckled. Amadi, not to him, I mean the leadership. He saw Amadi challenging the leadership. I want to make it clear. The crisis is not just about male and female, and that's the one we're losing it. If it becomes male-female war, we miss out the case that Natasha is putting across. This is a case of alleged harassment of an individual by a leader who has reportedly abused his power.
Okay.
When we put it into a male-female war, we make it, so look at the point I'm making. So the point I'm making is, look, we have to fight hard on the issue of the alleged violation. We also have to look at the political setting. And the truth of the matter is that this report is political. Like she said, look, the people she's fighting against, back home, and now the Senate President and other powerful people, are people who don't take prisoners. Well, I'm sure, sorry to say, I don't have confidence in INEC, independent. INEC has earned the right not to be trusted. But INEC will go through a process, obviously, and they're going to the right process. But at the end of the day, the verification will still be the way we do election. So, unfortunately, Natasha will be bumped off of Senate because the people she's fighting is a very immoral clique of
just quickly because we need to go. Because
who
we
will
need
do
to
the same for women and for men.
Dr. Amadi, quickly because we need to go.
Men or female, they will be brutal.
Okay, in your remark, just quickly, you said that the leadership of Senator Akpabio as the president of the House, is pretty much disastrous, even though he's a friend of yours. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest.
I can say that because, I served Kenyaman. And look at the issue of just River State. How on earth will somebody see a clear constitutional provision and you go and cook an aberration? I mean, everyone knows I say the truth. Don't care about it. It's close to me. We talked before now. But the point I'm making is very simple. that I want this to lead into an inquest into the structure of the parliament. The parliament is a deliberative chamber that turned into a powerhouse. That's the problem. They make it look like a second executive presidency.
Okay,
most distinguished.
I'm sorry, I just need to cut in.
Let me
bring in Mr.
Rotimi.
Let me bring in Mr. Rotimi Oyekanmi, for just a 30 seconds remark. I mean, a swipe was thrown at INEC. Dr. Amadi did say that he doesn't even trust INEC, and maybe, hopefully, this might make a difference. Just in 30 seconds, your response.
Well, your voice is breaking, but I think I get a sense. We are interested in the process, and we have the extant law as we apply to every activity that we undertake. We are not interested in the politics of the matter. We are interested in the process, and our own assurance to Nigerians is that we are going to follow the process. We are not going to allow any influence, any public influence. We will ensure that every level of this process is followed duly, and we will have witnesses, because people can then scrutinize what we are doing and then report back to Nigerians that this is what INEC has done. So I can assure the...
All right. Thank you so much for your time on the program. Mr. Rotimi Oyekanmi is the Chief Press Secretary to the INEC Chairman. It's been a pleasure. Also, Cynthia Mbamalu, Director of Programs, Yiaga Africa. Thank you so much. And Dr. Sam Amadi, Director, the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Now, this is where, of course, we drop the curtains on today's episode. In case you missed out, you can catch up on our YouTube platform. That's at News Central TV. You can also watch us live on GoTV channel 23. We are there. You can also choose to follow me personally at Dakpo at Digboye. Until I come your way tomorrow, good night.